has a list. It's the green button. I used to have this one. This one, although the go forward button is kind of worn out. Yeah. Jerry, was this yours?
No.
No? Okay.
That was there. They're gonna untie.
All right, I'm gonna put a lid on it. Oh, he doesn't have to do too much.
No, it's not much. Just untie. Solamente la hace. ¿Hay micrófono?
Desmutealo, desmutea, sí, el uno.
Listo, ya. Todavía no lo vamos a presentar, tenemos como 5 minutitos. Quería hacer un comentario rapidito acerca de Jerry. No sé si se dieron cuenta la pasión con la cual Jerry hacía la presentación, ¿no? O sea, uno veía que él vive lo que es ciberseguridad, ¿correcto? Entonces, eso es algo que a mí me parece muy importante, nosotros como profesionales, poder llegar a ese punto, ¿verdad? Que uno crea mucho en lo que uno está haciendo y que la pasión le salga, porque eso es lo que lo lleva a uno a llegar más lejos en su carrera. Entonces, a mí me pareció muy importante y muy interesante. Fue muy bueno. Bueno, entonces ahora comenzamos. Esta es una charla muy interesante, come on, Tazz, acerca de inteligencia de amenazas o threat intelligence. Tazz está quebradita, así que por favor está haciendo un esfuerzo bastante fuerte. Did you get your pills or nothing? Okay, entonces, ayúdame aquí. All right, Tazz, go for it.
Hola. 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 Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up, all of you. Everybody stand up. If I'm standing, you're standing. Stand up. Everybody over here, look at everybody over there. Everybody over here, look at everybody over here. Everybody over here, look at everybody over here. And repeat after me. Do something new. Hey, today we're going to do something new. You can sit down. Let's see if I can work this technology here. So today this is the plan for discussion. Hopefully we get through everything. There are going to be some places where I'm going to go fast. I need you to have out a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper. You will participate today. You only need room on the pen and paper to be able to write down 10 numbers. So it doesn't have to be a big piece of paper. But if you get that out now, we'll use it in a little bit. So I'm going to do a brief introduction of myself, and then we're going to talk a little bit about documentation, why it's important in threat intelligence. We're going to go over some vocabulary terms. We'll talk about the objectives between business versus threat intelligence, intelligence requirements, what is actually defining a requirement, threat actor profiles and attributes, which is where you will participate, and then I will talk about the threat intelligence cycle, and then we'll take some questions. So my name is Tazz. At the top, you see my Twitter handle. Doesn't have the @ sign. It's GRC_ninja. My blog is osint.fail. How many of you here know what the acronym OSINT is? It's an American acronym. Okay, OSINT, OSINT, is open source intelligence. That's basically the internet. But it's also things such as newspapers, libraries, news reports, gossip, what some people call gossip winds up becoming intelligence. And that's what I do. That's my specialty, is open source intelligence. So what I do is I help people go out and figure out what kinds of threats they're facing, how to prepare for them, how to anticipate them instead of having to respond to them. So one of our colleagues this morning talked a lot about prevention, and the company that I own is called Divine Intelligence. So documentation. How many of you want to have threat intelligence in your company? Raise your hand. How many of you think you could benefit from it? Okay. If you have not documented a threat intelligence program, you should not be hiring people to work in threat intelligence. If you don't know what you want to be when you grow up, don't try to grow up so fast. How many of you know what a dynamic documentation wiki is? Everybody know what Wikipedia is? Know what a wiki is? You don't want everybody to have admin rights to the wiki to make changes on the fly, right? Okay. Well, threat intelligence targets and threats, and the landscape for threat intelligence moves very quickly. So if your documentation is a very long process for something to get updated, published, and shared, that's not a good thing. By the time you've shared the information, it's outdated and it's old. So having a dynamic wiki available for internal, for people to share and post information, to document processes, to document policies, which I hope are few and far between, but some are absolutely necessary. Those things that you need to change. After you have an incident, you have an after-action review, you talk about your lessons learned, you need to get those documented quickly. So if you're exposed to a threat, or you're available or become aware of a threat, you need to be able to communicate that information quickly. Having a dynamic wiki is important to that. In that wiki, you need to have a vocabulary list. You literally need to have a page dedicated to your threat intelligence dictionary. Not everybody in your organization is going to understand what you mean when you use certain words. This morning, my colleague gave a very good example. When the Secretary of Defense in the United States says the word, go secure something, he has 4 branches of military service, and all 4 of them define what go secure means to them. They all respond differently because they all have different context for the word secure. So you have to have a documented vocabulary for your organization. After you document it, be consistent with it. If you say hi, hi needs to mean the same thing every time. Critical needs to mean the same thing every time you use that word. Using interchangeable vocabulary is very bad in threat intelligence. So be concise, be precise, and be consistent with your vocabulary. You need to have a documented communication plan. How many of you know what to do when the school calls you when your child doesn't show up for school, but you know you dropped them off? The school knows when child A does not show up, we call child A's mother. If the mother doesn't answer, we call the father. If the father doesn't answer, we call the aunt. That might be the school's process, yes? There's an incident, and they know who to call and what to say. Having a communication plan for threat intelligence information is critical. The last thing you want your team saying is, holy crap, the world is about to explode, who do I tell? Some things you don't want in email. That communication plan needs to tell somebody, pick up the phone and call person X. Or, for this kind of thing, send an email to this email address. Or, pick up the phone while running up the stairs and banging on somebody's door, then send the email. But whatever it is, your team needs to know, what am I going to do when I get different kinds of information? If I got classified government information by accident when I opened up an attachment because I asked somebody to send me threat information, how do I respond? Who do I tell? Right? Okay, well, what do I do if I find a domain that's being used to phish our customers? Who do I tell? When do I tell? How do I tell them? How long do I wait for a response before I contact the next person in the next means? So part of your threat intelligence program needs to have clearly defined communication plans. And in those communication plans, you need to be talking to people with respect to the role that they hold more often than you talk about the person's name. Because what happens when a person quits their job or leaves the company? Now you have to go change all of your documentation to get rid of their name and put the new person's name in, right? Instead, put in the role. You need to contact the director of marketing. You need to contact the legal counsel team. You need to contact the information security manager. Or is it the director? Or is it the vice president? Don't put their names in there, put their roles in there. You need to document the tools that you use. What's an acceptable tool? In our case, for threat intelligence, a lot of the times we use sources. So sources can be tools for us. You need to document, okay, we tried to use this source. We used it. It didn't really return a lot of value for us, so we're not going to use it anymore. Does that mean you'll never use it again? No, but you have a historical record of the fact that you have tried to use it. So when in 12 months or 15 months, somebody else comes in and says, hey, I heard about this tool. You guys should go use this. You say, thank you. We've tried to use it. The people that were there around when it was getting used or tested might be gone. They might not know. But if you documented that you used it and you tried it and what you got out of it, then you'll have a record and you won't spend time redoing your work. Again, sources also change in their reliability and they change in their bias. Part of documenting in your tools and sources is the bias of your source. There's a bias difference between BBC News and CNN News. There's the difference between bias in Al Jazeera News and ABC News. Would you agree? So you also need to understand the bias of your source. If all you do is keep the bias between your two ears and you're the only person that knows what the bias is, nobody else can use that information. Okay? So, we're going to start with the vocabulary lesson. And words matter. Words we're going to define here today are threat, vulnerability, risk, severity versus impact, probability versus likelihood, and intelligence requirement. How many of you have a documented definition of threat in your organization? Raise your hand. It's written down. That's not a lot of hands. Okay. How many of you would agree that if I told you a 5-year-old was a threat to my organization, how many of you would agree with me? What if I told you that I keep free candy at the front door of my organization? Are 5-year-olds now a threat to my secretary? Absolutely. Okay? So I might define a threat as anybody that seeks free candy is a threat. So now every elementary is a threat to my organization. But my point is it comes down to defining what a threat is. If there is an attacker out there and that attacker just hates, absolutely despises people that make purple widgets, and you don't even make widgets, much less purple widgets, are they a threat to your organization? Probably not. But if you make pink Nerf balls and they hate people who make pink Nerf balls, then they might be a threat to your organization. Okay, vulnerability, risk, severity versus impact, probability, likelihood, intelligence requirement. Here we go. A threat is a noun. It is a person, place, or thing. If you see a $sign followed by a word, that means you can substitute whatever you want for that item. So, everybody pick something in your head that you think is a threat. It's a person, a place, or a thing that will or seeks to disrupt, delay, divert, damage, or destroy your organization. Now, can each of you think of a few things that might want to disrupt your business processes? Is there somebody that might want to delay the delivery of your next product to market? Would your competitor love to beat you to market with your next product? What if somebody would like you to have to divert resources? Because money's finite, right? We only have so much of it. How many of you have a budget? Would you like to have to divert resources out of your budget that you planned for the next fiscal year to the tune of 30% of your budget? How would you feel if I walked in and said, okay, well, this incident happened over here, so I know we said we're gonna give you $1 million this year for your budget. I need 30,000 of that back. You'd be like, well, I was gonna buy new servers, or, well, how are we gonna fund this, the Christmas party? Well, what am I gonna do with it? I need that $30,000, okay? How many people can think of something that would seek to damage your reputation? Damage a physical facility. Damage a plant that manufactures what you make. Damage the company that hosts your website, if you don't host internally. And then, of course, the most extreme of these is destroy. Somebody may absolutely just want to destroy you off of the face of this planet so that you cease to exist, to even breathe. There are some people out there like that. Others may just want to destroy you and cause you such a financial loss that you have to shut down your business and you can't recover. How many of you are sitting here thinking about natural disasters? Okay, well, there are people out there that are worse than some natural disasters. Well, however you define a threat, though, the key point is to be consistent with your profiling. It also needs to be both qualitative and quantitative. How many people understand the difference between qualitative and quantitative? Okay, qualitative is where we use fuzzy words. Oh, I put qualitative and qualitative on that slide, didn't I? Wow, that's supposed to say qualitative and quantitative, okay? So quantitative is numbers, hard numbers. Some people need numbers, like your finance officer. Your CFO needs numbers. He doesn't need fuzzy words. Other people who deal with personalities as threats, more abstract things, need qualitative descriptions. They need something with adjectives that describes a level of threat. And you guys will see a little bit more about this when we move on to the next slide, into the threat actor profiles. All right, vulnerability. How many people have heard the acronym CVSS? More hands. Common Vulnerability Scoring System. This is how we score vulnerabilities in software. If you guys want to go out to the website, it's first.org/CVSS, and you can read about it. It's a global scoring system. It's how we say, how big is my risk on this vulnerability? Now, I will argue with you that 99% of you in this room probably do not properly score risk. Now, why do I say that? How many of you ever go out there, take a vulnerability score using the calculator, you go down to the environmental variable section and actually fill it out? I have one person. You don't count. Okay, you don't count either, Ben. Or you, sir, you're speaking. Okay, so a lot of you get these scores and something comes in and says, I have a vulnerability in Java, because there's always a vulnerability in Java, right? Or Adobe. There's a vulnerability in Adobe, and it's a 7. I need you to hurry up and patch it. And you freak out, and you're running around, and you're trying to patch Adobe, apply this patch, blah, blah, blah. But none of you went in and realized that there's a variety of environmental settings that you have that mitigate this risk, this vulnerability. And if you actually applied the numbers and you actually checked the boxes, it could go from, not will, it could go from being a 7 down to being a 3. And then it goes lower on the priority list of things that you need to address. So if you haven't done that, I encourage you to go out there. But the point is, when it comes to vocabulary and people speak about vulnerabilities, that number is normally what they use to communicate how big or important a vulnerability is. Some people call it a weakness. That's debatable. I don't like the word weakness because it implies that people take that personally, right? How many people have you ever heard, men don't cry? Right? We tell kids that all the time, men don't cry. A man who cries is weak. But let that man cry in front of his woman and she will think he is so strong and so brave, right? So the word weakness, I don't like that word. That is a qualitative word. CVSS is quantitative. It's numbers. Flaw, bug. How many of you are software developers? Okay. People have to patch bugs, patch software. Well, how do you know which one to patch first? Well, what do? They go back to CVSS. Well, the interesting thing about CVSS is if you actually go to a lot of vendors' websites, vendors will take the scoring of that vulnerability, and they will look at it and they'll say, okay, well, it came out with a critical score. Our software by default is designed like this. So if you installed our default installation, it's a moderate. It's not a 9, it's a 5. And then sometimes there's the inverse. Vendors will go out, the researcher reports the bug, it comes out as a 6 or a 7, and the vendor says, oh my God, no, that is really bad, and this is why. This is now a 9.5. Okay? So if you do find vulnerabilities, document in your organization, what do you do, where do you go, what mitigating controls do you have for environment variables, and what did the vendor say about it? But if you don't have it documented, you'll never be consistent. Also, vulnerabilities are sometimes called limitations. How many of us have limitations? Right now, I have a physical limitation. We have technical limitations. Resources, we have limited resources, we have limited money. And then you have blind spots. A known unknown. I know that I don't know anything about basket weaving. But I don't know what I don't know either, which is the unknown unknown. And that's the most dangerous. But the point is, vulnerabilities are inevitable. Would everybody agree that you can never totally mitigate risk? There will always be some level of risk, yes? All right. So risk. We're talking about vocabulary for threat intelligence in business. Business people, you say, what's up here on the left, what puts me at risk? If you're a C level or a V level, that's your question. What your threat intel team is thinking, we say, what makes us a target? We're thinking like the attacker. So you may be saying the same thing, you're just saying it different ways. Business people say, what are my risk factors? Threat people say, where would someone attack us? Not when or why or if, but where, because somebody's going to attack you. That's also inevitable. But how do you define risk in your organization? Document what the definition of risk is. And it may even vary between departments. Your human resources department may document it one way. They may define it one way. Your threat intel team's going to define it a different way. Your CFO is going to define it a different way. But make sure you understand the definitions for each department so that when you're trying to talk to them about threats, you can speak to them in a language that they understand. Severity versus impact. Okay, the severity of one shot of tequila in Tazz is very low. The severity of one bottle of tequila in Tazz is very high. Okay, the severity of a thunderstorm versus a hurricane. This is not the same thing as impact. The impact is, am I going to be hungover in the morning or do I have alcohol poisoning? Do I require a doctor? How many scars am I going to have from this? How long is it going to take to clean it up? Okay? These are two words that I find that are used interchangeably, but they don't mean the same thing to your threat intel team or to your InfoSec team or to your business people. Define them clearly in your vocabulary. Probability versus likelihood. This morning I saw a gentleman had a slide up here as likelihood. I will tell you, if you are a statistician and you love numbers, you say the word probability. If you are a fuzzy person who is qualitative, you say the word likelihood. So, what is the probability of drunkenness if I have to work and I'm only going to go out 2 out of 7 nights in a week? About 30% probability that I'm going to wind up drunk. I really don't drink that much, you guys. Now, Edgar, on the other hand, that's another story. So if I'm on vacation, though, 6 or 7 out of 7 nights a week, what's the probability that someone would be intoxicated or drunk on vacation? Between 85 and 100%, right? Now, if you came to me and said there's a 30% likelihood of something going wrong or of an attack, some people aren't going to react very strongly to 30%. But if your risk tolerance is extremely low, 30% might be outside of your risk tolerance level for your organization for something to go wrong. Now we talk about the likelihood of drunkenness. 30% is probably defined as low or moderate. Okay, but on vacation, the likelihood is probably defined as moderate, high, or extreme. Yes? How many of you have ever taken a survey for staying at a hotel and they ask you to score something 1 through 5? And then they give you words, but they don't give you numbers. You're like, okay, or what would you do if they only gave you numbers and they say, well, 1 is really bad and 5 is really good, but they don't tell you what 2, 3, and 4 mean. They let you fill in the blanks. I would bet that some of you would fill in 2, 3, and 4 very differently from the person to your right or left. You'll see why in a minute. Okay, objectives, business versus threat intelligence. I promise you, we are not at odds with each other. Your threat intelligence team, when and if you build one, is going to be driven by your business objectives. But how we define our objectives to help you meet your business objective are going to be with very different vocabulary. Business objectives, the first bullet, reduce risk by identifying threats in their pre-attack phases. How many of you would like to avoid being attacked at all? How many of you have ever heard of an indicator of attack? Most of you have heard of indicator of compromise, an IOC in English. The C stands for compromise, which means what? The bad thing already happened to somebody because we now have an indicator of it, right? But how many of you actually ever get an early heads up that something is about to go wrong? How many of you would like someone to pick up the phone and call you and tell you that the CEO is on his way to your office so that you can make a quick exit to the stairs and to your car? Right? Okay, reduce cost by reducing the time, money, and manpower spent on incident response and management, because incident management is not the same thing as incident response, but because threats are found and addressed in advance. This is the difference between your threat intel team and your incident response team. Oh, well, the lights just went off. Okay. Your threat intel team, their objectives are to help you avoid problems, to tell you the early indicators that something might be going on. If we started to see more and more and more protests, civil unrest, and boycotting in a particular region of the city, what's the probability or the likelihood that there might be some violent outbreak there? Wouldn't you like your threat intel team to be able to tell you that they're learning of these things going on in a geographical region where you have a business headquarters so that you could properly inform your employees to possibly stay home on a particular day and not drive into the office? You could avoid physical harm, you could avoid loss. The doors won't even be open. People wouldn't even be able to storm into your building because everything would be locked up. Okay? Consistently provide reliable decision-enhancing information for leaders. That's the third bullet. And notice I said decision-enhancing information for leaders. I did not say actionable intel. There's a reason for that. People think of action in that I will do something. This is not the case. If someone told me today that it was going to rain, I am able to make an informed decision on whether or not I will wear these open-toed shoes. Do I want to get my feet wet? Well, you told me there was a 99% chance of rain, and I went and wore these shoes anyway. Did I take action based on the information that you gave me? No, but I did make an informed decision. I packed an extra set of shoes and some socks in this case. But what if I did nothing? Well, the reason I did nothing and I wore these shoes is because these are actually prescribed by my doctor for my feet for my back problem. Okay? You can give somebody information, you can give them the intelligence. It doesn't mean they're obligated to use it. If you are on the other end and you are an executive, your threat intelligence team is not to make the decision for you. It is to give you the information so that you can make the decision. You are the leader in charge. It is your job to make the decision with what they give you, and it's not always going to be perfect. When someone reports to you, sir, I think this is going to happen, you should ask them, what is your confidence level in that information? How confident are you? How reliable was your source? As an executive, those are your two key buzzwords, confidence and reliability. The information may come from a very unreliable source, but there may be a reason that they're extremely confident in it. It may be because there were slight hints to this in somewhere else, but you have a very unreliable source that came to you very bluntly and directly and told you exactly what was about to happen. So as an executive, you can make an informed decision based on that. So threat intelligence meets the business objective of helping you make better decisions. And we also want to add value to customers by providing threat intelligence that allows them to make well-informed business decisions. So threat intelligence teams in-house can help you with customer-facing communications, but normally they'll serve in-house before they serve out. If your company is not in the business of providing threat intelligence, if that is not the product that you make and you make something else, do not build a threat intelligence team with the objective of being value added to the customer. They are there for you. If you sell threat intelligence or you make intelligence and that's your bread and butter, that's a whole different story. But I will bet that probably maybe one, if I'm lucky person in this room, actually, your product, what makes you money, your bottom dollar, is threat intelligence. Okay? So, threat intelligence objectives. I'll read these pretty quickly. I hinted to them at the beginning. Your threat intel team has some different objectives that tie back to your business objectives. We want to limit a threat actor's capabilities and reduce their attack options. Okay? We want to make the footprint smaller. We want to shut down ports that aren't necessary. We want to possibly add some environmental, physical barriers to a building so that somebody can't just drive through the front door, right? We want to remove capabilities, harden your systems. How many of you guys have ever heard of doing system hardening? Okay? We also want to disrupt their plans. Stop any activities that they've been doing that's undetected or allowed them to operate without sharing what we learn with defenders. How many of you have some sort of dashboard in your organization that lights up when something breaks a threat? Let's just say you exceed the threshold for failed password logins, okay? Threshold is 5. You can attempt to log in 5 times, right, in so many minutes. And if you break that, then what happens? You automatically get locked out of your account, right? Okay. I'm not worried about the guy that's setting off the alarm. I'm worried about the actor who knows what your threshold is for the alarm. That's who I'm hunting. I'm hunting the guy that isn't setting off your dashboard. I'm looking for the anomaly in your data as your threat intel team. Your InfoSec team, they need to worry about the dashboard. Your threat intel team, we're worried about what you can't see, okay? We also want to delay an actor's timeline or ability to launch an attack. How do you do that? What is the easiest way to delay an actor's ability to launch an attack? In English, it starts with a P. Patch. Patching will delay an actor's ability to affect your systems. You'd be amazed. Okay, we also want to divert any resources they may use, render them unavailable. I worked for a company called Talos out of Cisco. We helped to shut down an entire division of a malicious actor's infrastructure by working with an ISP. We worked with the ISP to find them within their networks, shut them down, and cost them over $80 billion in losses. So if we can work with partners when we're sharing threat intelligence, we can divert their resources, shut them down. They had to migrate and move all of their malicious activities out of that ISP and all of their nodes globally. It was a huge impact to threat actors. We also want to destroy the infrastructure or organic existence, or damage their forces, shut down a botnet. Please understand that everything I have said above here is not an endorsement for you to go do anything illegal. I am not encouraging you to hack back, okay? That is a very slippery slope that I am not going to slide down today. So, intelligence requirements. How am I doing on time, Ed? Good? Okay. There's two types of intelligence requirements. Yes, only two. There's general, which is something you always want to know. You're always going to be interested in it. And then there is a priority that is specific, it's regularly revised, and it has a one-to-one relationship. There is one priority requirement for one business decision that you want to make. I don't have time to boil the ocean and hunt all the boogeymen on the internet. I need you to tell me what's keeping you up at night this quarter. Because what keeps you up at night this quarter is probably going to change in the last quarter of the fiscal year. Okay? So there's things that are always going to be of concern to you. How many of you would be interested if there was a new vulnerability in Bluetooth? Everybody would generally be interested in a vulnerability in Bluetooth, but that's not a priority. The priorities are what's going to be happening in your business in the next 3, 6, 12 months, usually. Okay? Now, how often is regularly? At least every 6 months. You need to be going back and looking at least every 6 months and see, okay, this was number one, but we've managed to obtain some information on it in the last 6 months. So we're feeling better about what we know to make an informed decision. So this priority requirement is now number 3. And then in another 6 months, that number 3 priority is probably going to become general information requirement. It will probably move down the ladder. But if it's something that is a constant concern to you, then that is still a general requirement. Your priority requirement is for your strategic threat intelligence team. Your general intelligence requirements are for your operational level and tactical intelligence team members. So the rules for PIRs, Priority Intelligence Requirement, the acronym in English is PIR. No more than 4, preferably 3. Your strategic threat intel team is probably also going to be very small. Also, you want them to focus on a specific fact, event, or activity. Again, 1 PIR, 1 priority intelligence requirement, is for leadership to make 1 decision. Things you should not do, the word don't. Do not write them for the business. Coach them. One day you will leave And they need to know how to do this when you're gone. How many of you have heard, teach a man to fish and he eats for a life, give him a fish and he eats for a day? The same principle applies here. Also, whoops, wrong button. Do not forget the general intelligence requirements. Sometimes your team can get so focused on the priority intelligence requirements if they're small that they're getting lost in the sea, as somebody said, the signal in the noise. They're getting lost in the sea of information, and sometimes general threat intelligence nuggets will slip through the cracks. So make sure that you're allowing them time to work on the general and work on the priority. In some cases, when you have a brand new team, I actually tell them, put on your calendar 10 hours for your general requirements a week, 30 hours a week for your priority. Okay? When you get down at the tactical level, it's the inverse. Your tactical team will focus on your general intelligence requirements 30 hours of the week, and they would focus on the priority ones 10 hours a week. These are some examples of good PIRs. I'll go ahead and read them off. Remember, if you see a dollar sign, I'll underline it when I say the word slowly so my translator can help me out here. Translator, when you see me read a word with dollar sign, just tell them they can replace that. Okay. What are the current indicators of an organized cyber attack on location or asset? Now, if your company operates in multiple locations, if you say South America, that's a pretty big region unless you only have one office. Narrow it down, okay? What are the indicators that Group A or Actor B is planning attack on my pink widgets? Now, if you don't make pink widgets, you wouldn't be asking that question. You would substitute pink widgets with whatever it is that makes your money. Which tools does Actor Z use? Protocols, scripts, scanning, or tools? Well, if you know that your threat actor likes to use a specific scanning set of software and you see something hit your network and it's coming from something that has a signature of that software, that might be an early indicator of attack. He's not using a general, widely known tool. He's using something that's very specific, unique, and rarely seen. What are the actors' subsequent and fallback locations, i.e., a service provider, and how could or will they transfer their attack platforms from infrastructure location A to location B? This is a form of reverse targeting. If I know that in order to launch an attack, you need a mountain that is 50,000 feet in the air, that's not covered with trees, and in a warm climate, I could go look on a map and figure out where you might be, right? So if you know that a threat actor needs a specific set of resources to be able to launch an attack, and you think of it in reverse, you could figure out where attacks might come from. You could profile the locations that they might launch attacks from. For instance, I don't want to say that name out loud. If there's an internet hosting company that sells really cheap domains, and I actually did some research on this, so I could speak to this one. They sell cheap domains. In dollars, it's going to be 99 cents or less. Guess who is going to go where the cost of entry to commit the crime is low? They're going to flock to the internet service provider that sells domain names for less than 99 cents, which is how many pesos here, Ed? $1, 2,000, 2,500 pesos? Okay, so 3,000 pesos. They're selling domain names for less than 3,000 pesos. Where do you think the bad guys are gonna be? Okay, but if it costs them 20,000 pesos to buy a domain name, that's probably going to get blacklisted and burned within 24 to 48 hours. Do you think they're going to hang out over there? Probably not. Is this catching on? Yes, no, maybe, so? Okay. Okay, threat actor profiling. Is everybody ready to profile some threat actors? Yes? See? Okay, get your pen and paper. This is gonna go fast. Okay, I'm gonna put a word up here, and then I'm gonna give you a definition for it. Okay, then you have to pick a number 1 through 5, which describes the threat actor. So here's our situation. All of you are CEOs of Chips Ahoy. You make cookies. All of you are going to the World's Cookie Fair, okay? You're going to the World Cookie Fair. All of you are staying at the company. You're staying at the plant, okay? So what should that tell you right away? Your score of a threat is probably going to be very different from your score of the threat, okay? All right. Now, here's your threat actor. 500 8-year-olds. I am letting a group of 500 first graders come to your location. Now let's score our threat. Okay, here's what we're gonna score them on. The point is to be consistent. How am I consistent? I assign a value to a number, and the value stays the same every time you fill out the profile. You're going to be scoring these 500 8-year-olds on their determination to get the cookies, their motivation for getting the cookies. What resources do they have to steal your cookies? What technical, intelligence, financial, and people? We know the team size, right? 500. So you guys are already ahead of the game on one. We also want to know what are the skills and experience of these 500 8-year-olds. How long can the 500 8-year-olds infiltrate your World Fair or your cookie factory and remain undetected? And how long do they have to do malice, bad activity? Ready? Okay. Determination is how easily do the children scare? Very easily, they will run away forever is number 1. 2, easily, they'll play hide and seek. 3, not so easily, they will engage you digitally and passively. Number 4, they're aggressive. They will get in your face. Number 5, they are hostile. They will draw down on you with their water guns. Give me a score, write it down. What is the motivation of these children? What is their end game? What do they want out of what they're going to do to you? How many of the kids just want bragging rights that they stole a cookie? That's a 1. How many of the kids were coerced, incentivized, blackmailed, or bribed to go steal a cookie? That's number 2. The bully told them, go steal the cookie for me or I'm gonna beat you up for a week. That would be an example. Number 3, personal income. The kids plan on doing this for the rest of their lives. They're gonna be cookie thieves, and this is a way of life, okay? 4, they have a hero complex. They want to save the world from your cookies because they're so bad. Or 5, they have a God complex. They want to burn the world to the ground and nobody should have cookies ever again. Hurry up, write your number down. What resources do these kids have available to them? Number 1, they're technical resources. They have free tools available, and that is it, nothing else. 2, it's free and cheap. They don't have a lot of money. Mom doesn't give them much money for allowance each week, so they had to save it up for a really long time, so they can't afford a lot. They need some cheap tools. 3, paid or customizable. The tools that they use, somebody else builds them, but they have some configuration options in them for how they want to launch their attack to steal the cookies. 4, these kids are in a secret society, invite only in-house. I'm telling you what they do at the playground, nobody knows about, okay? If you didn't get invited to the playground, you don't get to have the tools that are available. 5, 100% proprietary restricted development. I'll give you a hint. That's a nation state. Some of these 8-year-olds are APTs, I'm telling you. Okay, what intelligence resources do the kids have? Open source only. All they know is your address because it was on the internet. All they know is that the fair is happening because it's been advertised. 2, they've got a little bit of inside knowledge. Somebody's mom works at the cookie factory. Now, mom's just a secretary. She's got basic user level access, right? But the 8-year-old knows mom's password. Or 3, internal company, operational level intelligence. There's some manager in there that's feeding the kids information. They may even have power user rights. 4, internal company, strategic. They have domain admin root. You are owned, buddy. 5, internal proprietary intelligence. They know the secret sauce to the chocolate chip cookies. Financial. How much money do they have available? Because everything costs money, right? Okay. The kids pooled their money together and they have X. They have less than $2,000. Okay? Say less than 50,000 pesos. Or the kids have between 2,000 and 10,000. 3, you think 500 8-year-olds got together $10,000 up to $50,000. 4, one of those kids' parents is a millionaire, and at 8 years old, his trust fund is humongous. He has between $50,000 and $2 million available to him. Or all of the billionaires' kids got together, and they have pooled their money, and now they have more than $2 million available for resources to pay the rest of the 8-year-olds to launch the attack. And how many people are on the team? This one's kind of a giveaway. I told you there were 500. This metric for measuring threat is one that's a little bit debatable. But I'm going to let you choose your own number. In some cases, a 1 or a 2, they're going to have a few tech-savvy and a few non-tech-savvy kids in the group. 3 is going to be a few full-timers and a few part-timers, but they're all tech-savvy. 4 is going to have full-timers only, but 5 would have a 24/7 operation, right? Now, some people will argue and say, well, Tazz, you've kind of already hit on some of the other metrics, right? So the reason I didn't give you this one outright, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit, is it's going to be based on how you define it in your organization and if you choose to use this metric in your measurement. And just so that you know, out on my website, there's a blog for this that has a link to a PDF with all of this and a calculator at the bottom for you to tell you how to use it with CVSS scoring. So, skills and experience. These kids have probably never done this. This is a 1. They've done this a couple of times. They've raided the fairground, but they've never really raided where you guys are at, but they left a lot of footprints. 3, the threat actors are pretty good at this, but they cover their tracks a little bit. Took you a little bit of time to find them on your network. 4, these 8-year-olds could teach a class on cookie thievery, okay? You almost missed the fact that they were in your network, but somebody stumbled across a log or a text file on a system that shouldn't have been there. Or they're subject matter experts. They're extremely quiet. They leave no footprints. They stole all of your cookies and you didn't even know that they were there until they took pictures of the hostage cookies and sent them to you. Because no bad actor would ever steal something, then redact some of it and post it on the internet to prove that they had it, would they? They'd never do that. Okay, now how long did the 8-year-olds go undetected in their attack on you? So my first question to you is, do you care what the industry average is? Your answer should be no. Because how many people were honest or actually reported how long somebody went undetected on their network? Because if I asked you, would you fudge it just a little bit to make yourself look slightly better than you really were? Probably. I think Gartner's average a few years ago was 200 days undetected as the average attacker. Okay. So you don't care what the industry average is. Whatever your risk tolerance is, pick your numbers. So they can go undetected for less than an hour, but you shut them down. 2, between an hour and 30 days. 3, between 30 days and 180 days. 4, between 180 days and 365 days. Or 5, they've been mucking around in your cookie network for over a year. Now, how often do the kids get to go out and be bad, right? Well, mom and dad keep a pretty tight lip on a Monday through Friday, so they can only do this on the weekends. That's a number 1. 2, they have a day job, so they can only screw around in the evenings a couple weeks, a couple days a week. They've got a girlfriend, wife, or a husband, boyfriend, so a couple nights a week. 3, this is their part-time job. You notice that you're only getting attacked on the weekends or maybe on Sunday, or only on Saturday and only on Sunday and a couple days during the week. It's a part-time job. These 8-year-olds are nonstop after your cookies, okay? You're gonna be at the fair 7 days and they keep showing up trying to steal the boxes of cookies. This is a 24/7 operation. I'm telling you, these kids start in the morning, start at night, they're at midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 24/7 operations, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. They are constantly in your face, constantly attacking you. I think some of the 8-year-olds are 24/7 ops. They don't sleep. So, most of you who participated should have 9 numbers on your paper. Add them up. Okay. Now divide by 45. That is a threat score for a threat actor. Now, what we did here was very simple. This is actually a very complicated process that requires a lot of conversation. But the point is, if you work with your InfoSec team, your threat intelligence team can probably identify the people that are most often or profile the attacker or attackers. And when I say attacker, it could be a group of people. So if I say attacker, I don't necessarily mean one person. It could be a coordinated group. They have a name. Or it could be a single person that you fired 2 years ago that just has it out for you, okay? There's a term in America called APT, Advanced Persistent Threat. I will tell you, a 5-year-old who's hungry and has to wait to eat is an advanced persistent threat. They are persistent, they will not stop until you feed them, yes? So the P in APT is simply for persistent. Anybody who is persistent and constantly coming at you is a persistent threat. That does not mean that they are a nation-state actor. They could be a local evangelist. All right, quickly, the threat intelligence process. I have a blog out there. It's in English. I apologize. Google Translator is probably going to jack it up. But it's called How to Build a Threat Intelligence Program, and it goes through the 9 steps of doing it. One that's not actually included on here or talked about very much is actually giving back to the community. All right, so it's 3 primary phases: plan it, make it, and share it. Plan it, that is where you're going to spend most of your time if you're going to do it right. Make it, you collect, you process, you analyze and evaluate what you've collected, you tune your collection, and then you share it, you communicate it. This is why I stressed that you needed to have clearly defined communication plans. That needs to be done before you start collecting. So what is Tazz's number 1 rule? Plan, plan, plan. Do not collect intelligence without completing your planning tasks. Your planning tasks should also involve your legal team so they can tell you what you do and don't store on your network. What do you do if you find something that you didn't mean to find? What happens when you stumble across a text file that you thought was something else and you realize it's people's unique identification numbers, taxpayer IDs, home address, phone numbers, date of birth, and cell phone number? You didn't mean to download that. But if you didn't plan for what to do in that case, you are screwed, buddy. Okay. When you want to collect threat intelligence and you want to build a program, do it one source at a time. Collect from that source. You need a developer to automate that, by the way. Process it. Processing means getting what you've collected into a form that an analyst can use it and do analysis, okay? Then you do the analysis. Evaluate the data that was collected. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it helpful? Do I need to enrich it? Do I need to get something to complement it? Did it fork me off in another direction? Did I stumble across something that I didn't know? Or was this absolutely, completely worthless? How many times have you guys heard of the LinkedIn credentials that have been resold on the black market over and over and over? And then another hacker comes up and he says, oh, I've got 8 million people's credentials. And then the person that actually goes and gets the file says, there's absolutely nothing new in here. Is that useful information? Well, yes, because you know which bad actor is FUD, just blowing smoke, or which bad actors are legit. Well, then you'll tune your automation and you'll do another round of collection. And you complete this cycle until you can get intelligence that's usable so that you can share with the leadership so that they can make informed decisions. Remember that planning I was talking about? You need to know how, what medium, what format, and what you will share, because it's going to vary greatly. And your communication plan needs to be documented. What you share with private partners that you have certain sharing agreements with versus what do you share through your friend network versus what do you share publicly, that's going to vary. Whatever you do, down here under don't, do not list points of contact. We talked about this one by their actual names. Do it by roles. Do not be naive. That's a nice way of saying don't be stupid. Don't be arrogant. You are not the only person who needs to know. Job security is not found in withholding threat intelligence, okay? And don't assume that everybody else already needs to know. Don't assume that this doesn't really matter. It's not that important. Pfft, nobody's gonna care. You would be surprised how often a group that I'm in, we share a little nugget about something that we saw that was odd. It just made our little spider sense go off and say, that's strange. And then you share that strange thing with somebody, and it is the last missing piece to a puzzle that they've been working on. Okay? So don't assume that it's not important until you've actually gone through the analysis and the evaluation and the tuning, and make sure that you share it. By the way, nobody can collect all of the things all of the time in all of the places, not even the NSA. Thank you for joining me. My name is Tazz. My DM is open. You don't have to follow me on Twitter to send me a question, but that is the fastest and easiest way to reach me. So I have one question. Did you learn something today? Gracias. Thank you, Ed.